amigos? Feliz viernes. Hoy es viernes. Yo soy Rory y estoy contento de estar aquí contigo. You know, if you're in a place with Spanish where you're like, you know what, I've really got to figure out conjugations. Conjugations are so confusing. If that's where you are, this is where you want to start. The regular present tense verbs. This establishes the norms and the patterns for how you conjugate in multiple tenses. And what we're going to see is every verb tense has patterned endings. And so we might as well just start with the present tense. So here we go. Regular, meaning they follow the patterned endings, present tense verbs. Let's look at some examples here. All right. La asociada médica, the PA, la asociada médica examina al paciente. This is the verb examinar, to examine. So the PA examines the patient is what we're saying. La asociada médica examina al paciente. Okay, el paciente respira profundo. The patient breathes deeply. Okay, respira, respirar, from the verb to breathe. El paciente sufre dolor de pecho. The patient is suffering from chest pain. Okay, so we've had examinar, examine, respirar. Both of those are AR verbs. That matters, and we'll see it later. Now, sufrir is an IR verb. It ends in IR. That matters. We'll see it later. You can see the difference in the conjugation. El paciente sufre de dolor de pecho. El paciente no come bien. The patient does not eat well. Comer, ER verb. That matters. Here you can see the conjugation there. El paciente no controla su azúcar. The patient doesn't control his or her blood sugar. His, not her. Controla su azúcar. Controlar, AR verb. Okay, we're seeing some patterns. AR verb, it's ending in an A. That's an important piece of the pattern that we're going to begin establishing. El bebé, he drinks. El bebé, demasiadas bebidas azucaradas. So he drinks too many sugary drinks. ¿Sufres tú de dolor de pecho? Do you have chest pain or do you suffer from chest pain? No, gracias a Dios, yo no sufro dolor de pecho. ¿Come usted bien? Do you eat well? A veces yo como bien. Sometimes I eat well. A veces no como bien. Sometimes I don't eat well. ¿Bebe usted demasiadas bebidas azucaradas? Do you drink too many sugary drinks? Okay, we're seeing some patterns. Let's digest them and figure out what these patterns are. First step, though, is los sujetos en español, the subjects in Spanish. We've got to know who I, you, he, she, all that stuff is, right, in Spanish, because that's going to drive our conjugations with verbs. So yo is I. Tú is you for kids, talking to children, let's say up to, the mid-teens, 15, 16. Él is he. Ella is she. Usted is you for mid-teens and up, okay? Nosotros, we. Ellos, they. Ellas, they for women. And then ustedes is you all, okay? So these different subjects are going to dictate or control the conjugations that we have for our verbs. Now, we have three types of verbs. Tres tipos de verbos en español. We've got verbos AR, we've got AR verbs like examinar and respirar. We saw those in the initial examples. We've got verbos ER like comer and beber. We saw those in the early examples as well. And then verbos sufrir, like IR, like sufrir, and vivir. I don't think we saw vivir in our examples, but we did see sufrir. Three types of verbs. Verbos AR are verbs that end in AR in their unconjugated form. Verbos ER end in ER in their unconjugated form. Verbos IR end in IR in their unconjugated forms, okay? Bien, so our first step with all verbs, in fact, almost all tenses, not every single one, but almost all tenses, is to quitar la terminación. We're going to take off the ending of the verb. So if it's an AR verb, we'll drop the AR. If it's an ER verb, we'll drop the ER. If it's IR, we'll drop the IR. So like verbos AR, examinar becomes examin. Respirar becomes respir. Verbos ER, comer becomes com. And beber becomes beb. and then verbos IR, then we've got sufrir becomes suffer, and vivir becomes vive. Okay, that's the stem of our verb. And on this stem, we'll then begin adding the endings for the present tense. The endings, of course, are going to be different for past tenses, different for future, different for commands. Just every tense has its own set of endings, okay? So here we go. Segundo paso. We're going to take these second steps, adding the endings for each kind of verb. Let's start with ARs. So el segundo paso para verbos AR. Okay, yo's going to get O, tú gets as, él, ella, usted gets a, nosotros, we add amos, and ellos, ellas, and ustedes, they all add on. Now, does that mean that ellos, ellas, and ustedes mean the same thing? No. Ellos means they, ellas means they for exclusive group of women, and ustedes means you all. It just so happens they all get the same ending. Same goes for this one. Él means he, ella means she, and usted means you. It's the formal you that you'll use with the bulk of your patients, mid-teens and up. They all get the same ending, ah. In context, you can usually tell who's who and who we're talking about with context. And if it's uncertain, then you just add the subject in there too, okay? All right, so these all mean different things, but they get the same ending. Just wanted to make sure we were clear there. Okay, so let's take our verb respirar. Respirar, we drop the AR ending, and then we add the conjugation ending. Yo respiro, I breathe. Tú respiras, you breathe, talking to children. Él, ella, usted respira. He breathes, she breathes, you breathe. Nosotros respiramos, we breathe. Ellos, ellas, ustedes respiran. They breathe, y'all breathe. Okay? Bien, that's it. Not that hard. Okay, we have our patterned endings, o, as, a, amos, an, and then we just add that to the stem of the verb to make the present tense. Let's jump to ERs and see what that looks like. Los verbos ER. These get o, es, hemos, and en. Okay, so we see some similarities. O for the yo form. Okay, there's an S in the to form. Okay, great. And there's a mos in the nosotros, and there's an en in the ustedes, ellos, ellas, ustedes. There's some patterns, but they're different. It's an ER verb, so it's got an E in it. Okay, so let's take a look at comer, to eat. So I eat, yo como. You eat, talking to a young child, tú comes. He eats, él come. She eats, ella come. Usted eats, so you eat, usted come. We eat, nosotros comemos. They eat, ellos comen. They, just women, eat. Ellas comen. Y'all eat, ustedes comen. Okay, bien. Let's move on to verbos IR. Verbos IR, you're going to see in all of our tenses are very, very similar to ER verbs. So ERs and IRs are very, very similar in all tenses. Okay, so we're going to see a lot of repetition here with IR verbs that we had with the ER verbs. Okay, yo, o, tú, es, él, ella, usted, nosotros, imos, ellos, ellas, ustedes, en. Okay, so a lot of repetition, but we've got nosotros is the one that's different, okay? Okay, all right, let's look at vivir, the verb to live. So yo vivo, I live. Tú vives, you live. Él, ella, usted vive, he, she, or you live. Nosotros vivimos, we live. Ellos, ellas, ustedes viven, they, and you all live. Okay, bien. It's time for us to do some practice. Now remember, all we're doing is we're taking off the ending and we're adding the conjugated ending to the stem of the verb. Okay, so here we go. Here we have our notes. Our endings for AR verbs, o, as, a, amos, an. ERs, o, es, hemos, en. And IRs, o, es, imos, en. Okay, bien. So here we go. La doctora trabajar en la clínica. How are we going to do this? We're saying the doctor works in the clinic. Oh, dang. The doctor, we didn't cover that subject. All we did was yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, ellos, ellas, ustedes. What do we do? Okay, we've got to think about what does the doctor represent. The doctor, la doctora, we know it's a woman. Is it multiple women or one woman? It's one woman. So it's one woman. What's the one woman equivalent here? It's ella, right? Okay, so we know it's going to be the ella form. La doctora, trabajar en la clínica. La doctora trabaja en la clínica. Let's keep going. Nosotros estudiar español. Easy. We have a nosotros equivalent up here for our examples so we can just apply the pattern here. Nosotros estudiar, what happens? Estudiamos. Nosotros estudiamos. Okay, for the next few, put me on pause so you have time to think about it yourself. To comer muchas frutas y verduras. You eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. To comer, what's it going to be? Put me on pause to think about it for a second. Tú comes. All right, muy bien. Ustedes no beber bebidas alcohólicas. Y'all don't drink alcoholic beverages. Ustedes no beber, y our verb, ustedes form, put me on pause. Beben, that's right. Ustedes no beben bebidas alcohólicas. Yo vivir en Colorado. I live in Colorado. Yo vivir, I our verb, yo form, put me on pause. Yo vivo en Colorado. I live in Colorado. Él sufrir de diabetes tipo 2. So he suffers from type 2 diabetes. Él sufrir, I our verb. Él sufre de diabetes tipo 2. Okay, how are you going to practice these verbs? ¿Cómo practicar? First of all, descarga los apuntes para memorizar los verbos comunes. First of all, make sure you get the downloads in this lesson. If you're seeing this on YouTube or somewhere else, make sure you get over to the blog post so you can get the notes download and have the common verbs list that you can begin working with and memorizing. And then para practicar las conjugaciones, in order to practice the conjugations, I would suggest using, this is a cheap little wooden die that you can find like at Hobby Lobby or online, Amazon or whatever. And it's got, a die has 6 sides to it, right? So we can do all of our conjugations. We've got yo on one side, nosotros on the other, él, ella, usted. And so when you roll this die, you're going to see a subject. And then from your list of verbs, you can just practice conjugating your verb with that subject. So you can do that, or you can use the Quizlet sets that we've put together. Again, if you're on the blog post, you'll see the practice set right there on the blog post. You can begin working with those verbs there. Or you can head over to Quizlet and go to CGI Spanish, and you'll see all of our Quizlet sets. Vocab, grammar stuff, everything. Okay? So you've got to practice this in order to get comfortable with it. All right, para conversar con su compañero de práctica, to practice with your conversational partner, here is some guidance. All right, focus on your 5 patient profiles. These are the 5 patients you see week in, week out, common archetype patients, right? So these are your stereotypical patients, week in and week out. So how can you use present tense verbs to explain their condition to them? Let's think about that. So, for example, diabetes. Su páncreas no produce suficiente insulina para controlar el azúcar en la sangre. Your pancreas isn't producing enough insulin to control the blood sugar, okay? All right? And let's, so you can think of all sorts of different conditions, situations, presenting problems that your patients come in with and explain what's going on, okay? It's one way to begin implementing present tense verbs. How can you use present tense verbs to describe signs and symptoms that your patients have? Okay, you're not just describing now what's going on inside, but you're describing what they're experiencing, what they're feeling. So, por ejemplo, back to diabetes. Cuando el azúcar está alto, so when your blood sugar is high, posiblemente orina mucho en la noche. Possibly you'll be urinating a lot at night. Okay. All right, preguntas. If you have any questions, be sure to post them in the comments section below. And if you need a conversation partner, head over to the Facebook group, the Learning Medical Spanish Facebook group. Put yourself out there and meet a friend, okay? Gracias por aprender español conmigo. Juntos mejoramos comunidades. Para más español, head over to the website, Common Ground International. Hopefully you're on the blog post already, getting those notes and everything. And then para tomar un examen de español médico, if you'd like to test your medical Spanish terminology, head over to Certified Spanish and you can take as many free medical Spanish terminology tests as you would like. Hasta pronto, amigos.